days you work, one whole day to play. Come on, everybody, wear your roller skates today. It's Saturday, 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 it's Saturday, Saturday, it's Saturday, Saturday, it's Saturday,
Saturday with Renee.
Yes, welcome back, everybody, to Black Liberation Media, and a slightly early start for the uninterrupted, continuing consecutive streak of 100, and I believe is this 47 episodes of Saturdays with Renee. Featuring Renee.
I think it is.
Oh, Renee.
Listen, I'm good. You had me over here sweating. I was like, oof. Am I gonna have to push these buttons by myself?
So the thing is, so I ended up forgetting that we were starting early, but only because I got wrapped up in watching this Michael Hudson discussion about the economy, and I lost track. So I had gotten everything set up, and then lost track of where I was, what time, what was going on. Because of that discussion.
It happened.
And where I left it is something that that you and I talk about a good bit about, in correcting people's mythologies around the value of our homes. And the line that I left it on was Michael Hudson saying, the value of your home is measured by what a bank will lend for it.
Yep. 100%.
And I said, yeah, that's a. And then I said, and then I saw your text, and I said, oh snap! I'm early and still late.
I was proud of myself too. I sent out reminders. I made posts. I did I was like, look at me doing a whole thing, trying to make sure.
No, it's definitely 95% of all the errors with this program are on me. But
also 95% of how the show goes is you. Like I just show up on Saturday.
Like, well, it's all good. But we have a great show. So folks, welcome to those who are here live. Please make yourselves comfortable after you've informed your friends in your social spaces, and you've not been stingy with the show, and you said to your loved ones, and even some that you don't love so much, hey, where are you on this fine Saturday? So yeah, but
actually I think I agree. I'm not opposed to this.
I'm not either, actually.
Hour earlier start time, especially because football about to start, and that's 1 p.m. kick.
That is one contradiction. So not. I won't say that I'm supportive of the change to aid in that particular contradiction, but I have my own, and I'm happy to make the change.
Remember, I have to travel.
Yeah, no, you.
So my kick is actually being at a game. And
listen, let me know.
There's only two home games this year. It's a lot of traveling we're about to do. Actually, I think he might have a game down by you.
How do you have only?
There's 2 home games this season.
Well, one, if you do come down this way, definitely let me know. I'd like to come through.
100%.
And secondly, how do you only have 2 home games in a season? That seems wildly unfair.
There's a whole transition thing happening. They're changing levels, and so it changed. There's a lot happening right now. And so we're gonna have to, we'll see. I hadn't thought of that. The West Coast folks may suffer. 7 a.m. but I feel like if you're up at 8, if you like us enough to wake up at 8 on a Saturday to watch live,
you could get up.
I feel like you might be okay getting up at 7, but I don't know.
Look, sleep on it and let me know.
Yeah, we got some time to think about it. I also have to follow up to see if if we still have if the space is still set for show 150. Hopefully it's still on your calendar.
It is.
And let me make sure I have all my ducks in a row before I got people traveling to places.
You know. Yeah, no, I'm just, so sleep on it, let me know. And
but we have time. We have guests for the next few weeks, so there won't be anything that happens right now. But we maybe for show 151, if we're gonna make a change, we can do it for show 151.
Sounds good.
And make a shift. So we got some time to think on it. We got some time to think about it. Mani, I don't know why you thought today was Sunday, but that's funny. That's funny as all get out.
When you live the life of leisure, like Manny does, and a few of us, sometimes these days, blur into, we lose track of these days. When every day is a life of leisure, it's hard to it's hard to keep track.
Somebody used the word weary with me the other day. We were going back and forth on text, and I was like, I'm tired. And he was like, I'm weary. And I was like, oh, that's such a better word. Weary is a better word. I was like, there's all kind of connotations that come with weary. I feel that, Mani. I feel that. But I'm glad you caught the notice. Are you proud of me, Mani? I put out notifications. I made posts. I sent emails. Listen, I'm trying. This may be something, I think it worked too. So maybe, I'm definitely adding work to my list of work, but maybe once folks confirm with me that the calendar for the week is correct, I can set up posts to remind people that shows are about to start. Like Jay is real good at that.
Yeah, he does a good job.
Every show, you get a notification. So.
And how does he do that, actually? Is he doing that through Patreon?
Yeah, because it automatically sends an email.
Mm-hmm.
When you make the post and publish, it sends an immediate email. So, yeah, but you can pre-schedule them. So I could go through on a Sunday and pre-schedule all the reminders to go out for the week. So it's not that it's not doable. It's just that it has to be done and it has to be consistent. Like I have to commit to it for it to happen.
And folks, just make sure you also have the bell rung and set to get all the notifications on the channel too. So that'll help.
Yeah.
And
but you good? You still have children in the house. So I know you're basking in.
Not really.
They hanging. They ain't messing with you.
They're
right
out.
now.
They're out. They're out. I don't have. I'm happily stuck in the house with no car, and
they didn't leave you without the car.
I'm happy with it though. I don't want to go anywhere. I'm good. Take the car. Leave me here. And no, they're out in the world, and then in this fall, because we chose not to send our children to Howard University. So my youngest did not get unenrolled like so many did this last week.
I know, I saw that.
And she'll be starting college in the fall, so we'll be fully empty nest. So
what are you gonna do with yourself?
Weep and then show up here in front like I'm a functioning human being, and then maybe maybe squeeze a meal or two in between all the tears and the depression, and just the fetal position I'll be curled up on the floor.
I'll send my son to you to hang out every now and again.
That's fine.
There you go.
Because it's just a mess, and I'm not happy, and the children are they're like,
listen, they're ready to start life.
They're living it up.
Thank you, Robert, for the super sticker. Appreciate
Absolutely. Thank you, Robert. Appreciate you.
All right. So I think all of our guests that were going to join us are here. They've been patiently waiting, which I appreciate.
Yeah, right on.
Getting lovely behind the scenes, just so folks know. So just
Is, is Nico staying off camera? Otherwise, I can bring everybody up.
Oh
Nope,
no, I
nope.
guess not.
All
There you
right.
go. There
So
you
here we
go.
go.
So
Let's
let's
welcome
go.
our guests to the stage. Welcome everybody. Good morning. Good morning. Greetings. Welcome.
Thank you.
Morning.
Thank you. I'm very, very excited to talk to y'all. So as folks know, I try my best to, stay on top of emails and such. And we gratefully received an email from Zoe who offered for her crew to come on after their delegation to Bolivia. And so they could share all they learned and we could have some conversations about organizing and revolution and what's going on in Bolivia. And so we are very, very excited for you all to join us today. And as is our tendency, we're going to let you introduce yourselves. So, Zoe, you can start and then you can pass whoever you want to go to next. And then we'll go through the who you are, is where you came from, is why you're here, and then we'll get started. But thank you. Thank you so much.
No, thank you both so much. I hope everyone can hear me. I am riddled with nerves right now. But good morning, good afternoon. I don't know where everyone is located, in the undefeated chat, as Dr. Ball likes to say, but my name is Zoe. I'm 23. I am just a normal working class person who happens to live in the US. I feel like, kind of singing my own hagiography is not really like the point of, why I'm here. So I just feel like I'm just, a normal person who is just happy to have had the opportunity to go on a delegation, a solidarity delegation to Bolivia. And yeah, I'm a part of the Black Alliance for Peace. I used to be pretty decently involved in the Haiti Americas Committee. I'm slowly re-entering, coming out of a hiatus because I got really occupied with a bunch of work stuff. But yeah, that's who I am. I'm more excited to talk about Bolivia than I am myself. But yeah, Nico, Sophia, y'all feel free.
Well, hello everyone. My name is Sophia. I also feel a little bit riddled with nerves today. But yeah, I'm very stoked to talk about our solidarity delegation to Bolivia. A little bit about myself. Based in DC, from Colombian grandparents and a Chilean father. My father grew up during the U.S.-backed Pinochet dictatorship. So growing up, my father really helped shape a lot of my anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist views. I've been involved in different solidarity movements for Palestine in the past, but now I've been focusing a little bit more on kind of embedding myself into anti-ICE solidarity networks around the DMV area. And I also work with Nico to raise political consciousness for youth in the DMV. But yes, again, I'm very excited to be here. Take it away, Nico.
Hi, I'm Nico. I'm 19 years old. Thank you so much for having us, and I'm very excited to be able to talk about Bolivia. I'm Sophia's cousin, also of Colombian grandparents, and I think Sophia and her father are very influential for me, and kind of um, being raised with the anti-imperialism, but also I guess being uh, raised in DC as well and seeing those like contradictions with your own eyes. But yeah, I've been involved in anti-ICE organizing in Southern California when I'm in school, but back here and throughout the year, Sophie and I do uh, anti-imperialist political consciousness raising through popular education in the DMV with youth. And I'm very excited to be able to talk about Bolivia and just the importance of what's going on right there and really the beauty and intricacy of their organizing.
So first, y'all don't be nervous. This cast of characters in the chat, they gonna do what they do. They always gonna do what they do. They be alright. And I, Nico, am thrilled that you are only 19 years old and already in the strut. Like I love to see it. I appreciate it. Sophia, you just got like a mental tick on my list to follow up with because I need to know this story about your father. Like I want all of it. I want all the information. But why don't we start with how you all ended up going to Bolivia and what the structure of, and I know you have like notes for things that you all want to make sure you have covered. So after we do that initial piece, I'm gonna actually just let you all take over and explain what you want. We'll kick in questions, or if the chat has questions. But if we could start with how the delegation got formed, how you decided to go. I don't know if all of you can answer if you want. Whatever works best. But just so people understand how this initial setup happened and how you ended up in Bolivia to begin with, and then I'm gonna let you go because you had a full-fledged, y'all. So just so people watching understand, Zoe sent they sent a link and it was chock full of information. There was articles and pictures and information, and I was reading everything. There's so much information here, so we may have to bring you all back in order to actually like get through it all, which I'm all for, no worries. But I was really excited just reading everything that was pulled together by you all, and very excited by the conversations that you had. So like specifically, those write-ups were phenomenal. So I really appreciated your diligence in making sure that we got the information that we needed just to kind of prep. But it was so in depth that I just feel like y'all should just do it. Like you're good. We'll ask questions, we'll watch the chat, but let's just kick off with how the delegation happened and how you all decided to do it, and then we'll let you go.
I just want to co-sign that we definitely should have more than this one discussion, and you all were thoroughly prepared. It was Renee's spreadsheet level preparation. So I definitely have to get caught up myself. So yeah, but just wanted to co-sign that, and yeah, please take it away.
Okay. So I would say that this all kind of started off with a connection we have to Radio Causa Chuncoca, which is a people's radio in El Trópico de Cochabamba, which is the strongest point of indigenous organizing within Bolivia. It's kind of in the subtropical regions. And we had gone on their radio before because they're very internationally conscious to talk about ICE and to talk about perhaps different developments in U.S. imperialism through like a immigrant perspective or Latino perspective in the United States. And then when I got the opportunity to uh, uh, convince my institution to give me some money to do something to travel. We kind of put this together on the very last minute, but with tremendous help and tremendous grace from our compañeros and compañeras in Bolivia, who kind of we were just going to to learn, to show solidarity in a time in which um, abuses against the indigenous population and the threat of perhaps an assassination of Evo is at an all-time high. And so they welcomed us with open arms, and we kind of didn't really have much of a plan, and it was more centered around how we could be useful to the cocaleros, the campesinos within Bolivia. I don't know if Zoe or Sophia want to add.
Yeah, I think that, well, I mean, to address the elephant in the room about the copious pieces of information that I presented. Yeah, no, I'm a very diligent writer. I think that, and I think this is going to tie into what I'm going to add to what Nico said about the importance of a delegation. But I think that having, especially when you're accountable to a community that has a rich history of anti-imperial revolutionary struggle, I feel like it's really important to do your due diligence and to study and to be disciplined. So I feel like really the least I could do for the people that I'm trying to build long-term comradeships with in Bolivia is to accurately compile together a robust document that like they shared so much information with us. Like we were there for 2 weeks and we were very immersed for those 2 weeks that we were there. And I just feel like, I feel like I barely scratched the surface and that I honestly was generalizing things, but I think that the least that we can do as like members of a solidarity delegation is to present an accurate and rigorous and thorough like case basically for the Bolivian anti-imperial indigenous left, because something that we would always say while we were over there is that they are so principled and precise in their analysis, and I feel like in my writing for the document, I wanted to really make sure that none of that precision was lost, especially their analyses on the inter or intra like left conflicts, which we'll get into when we're able to free reign. But yeah, I think another thing to add about the delegation too is that we're affiliated with the Chiapas Support Committee, which is ongoing long-term solidarity project with doing journalism basically for the Zapatistas in Chiapas, Mexico. And our particular delegation for Bolivia was composed of, us, which are working class, anti-imperialist, Black, Latino youth. And we really do aspire to commit ourselves to struggle, which I think like distinguishes a delegation from something, the people would call a mission trip, or, the people would call like, just going to a place and then honestly being extractivist, which is what academia encourages us to do, and taking like firsthand accounts, personal testimonies, all these things to publish, something about yourself and your reflections. And I think that's important, right? But that's not the most important thing, right? Like when we went to Bolivia, like our main task was to be historical accountants. We're meant to absorb these testimonies and transpose them into tangible international solidarity work, whether that be report backs, what we're doing right now with this conversation, insights on how to ideologically develop the organizations we have in the US in tandem with those in Bolivia, or just doing press work in general around developing a mass political consciousness, or mass critical anti-imperial consciousness. Like our long-term goal is always to build long-term relationships and, a serious commitment to struggle. So yeah, I think that like what's important to know about delegations too is that they're about mutual learning and they're rooted in accountability to community leadership. So in this case, indigenous left leadership, while, things like mission trips or like, when people, go on behalf of some foreign aid organization, usually they go there to reinforce the reformist ideology of the home country or the home organization, or they, get trapped in this giver receiver dynamic. And that's not, that wasn't the point of our delegation. And that's not what like people should take away too from what we're saying about please go on a delegation, right? Like the point is for you to be in service to struggle. It teaches you to de-emphasize yourself as an American trying to do good works or whatever the colonial ideology that's persisted for how many years is, and to really just give yourself in service of struggle. So yeah, that's what I would add for now.
Can I say one more thing just really quickly? I think there are a lot of the reporting, even on the left of Bolivia, is from a very top-down perspective. Yet what you see in Bolivia is a majority of the organizing comes from the bases and from the people. And I think something that we hope to talk about a lot is how the people are making their decisions, how they're building their socialism. And so actually being able to be there and to be talking with those people was extremely important for us. Yeah, that's all I had to add.
Yeah, I just to kind of echo what my comrades were saying, it was truly an honor to be in the presence of such people who just opened their hearts and their minds to us so kindly. Um, they, I think the point of us going, kind of just what echoing what they were saying, was just kind of to build these relationships and to kind of have a continuous line of communication in terms of like international solidarity. We want to learn from them, and how Nico was saying how they have a collective organization rather than a top-down organization. We believe that there's so much that can be learned from them, and they were also so open to learning about us, the work that we're doing in the U.S. And it was truly an honor to be with them.
Where you want to go next?
I mean, I think you all had your list. You even designated who was going to talk about what. Look, we letting you cook. This you.
So is that? Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you. No, I mean, I feel like perhaps what is key to outline is first, I think we have to talk about Evo, right? Like that's something that we can't not talk about. And I feel like there's a lot of misinformation from right-wing mainstream media, both in Bolivia and here, about him. And I think it's really not just important to outline his monumental achievements as the first indigenous, communitarian, socialist president of Bolivia, but also how massively the indigenous left bases in Bolivia support him. Because I think something that we fall into a lot in the US is that, like, when we see people in other countries who democratically elect leaders and like are loyal to them, and the leaders themselves are like loyal to the revolutionary program that the people themselves have constructed, the right and, well, I mean, the liberals are the right. So like the right just in general, like big tent right in the US, like the first thing they do is like, oh, these people are, enslaved by this person's charismatic will. This person's a charismatic leader. He's an authoritarian, dictator with so much sway and all these things. And it's just like, no, actually what we're witnessing is real democracy. Like this is like communitarian socialism leads to real democracy. That is what democracy is. It's communitarian socialism. It's socialism, right? And I think that the reason people are loyal to Evo is because Evo is the people and the people are Evo, which is something we heard a lot when we were over there, is that he is a leader of the poor because he emerged from the poor and because the poor selected him. People chose him. Like he was democratically elected, right? And yeah, he's done so much. And we had the honor of meeting him and having a solidarity talk with him. And something I had mentioned in the email is that I think that the English translation of the solidarity talk should be shared widely with folks if it's possible. Because I don't want to butcher or, revise his words. I think that his words themselves are very powerful. But I guess like key things to note, and then my comrades, please feel free to snatch the mic from me, is that, he did landmark land redistribution reforms, which is, and if you're pursuing a socialist project, one of the first things you have to do to get people to gain economic, self independence and sovereignty is you have to redistribute land. There cannot be socialism without land back and indigenous like claim and inheritance of land, right? So he redistributed like 134 million acres of land to indigenous folks, and added the stipulation that land can no longer be seized by the state or private corporations for debt payment, which basically protects a lot of indigenous subsistence farmers from losing their rightful plots of land. Because before, like how in the US, okay, you don't pay your mortgage, bam, there goes your house that you never actually even owned, right? So in Bolivia, it's like, oh, these indigenous folks actually own the plots of land that are, first of all, are theirs because they're the rightful inheritors of the earth, and you can't take them away from them no matter what. And another thing that we learned from women campesino leaders, specifically Leonalda Choque Coque and Mama Jesusa, was that his land redistribution reform also included a stipulation that if land was collectively owned, it can no longer be sold to private interests. It can never become private property again. So that's what happened with a lot of the land that was redistributed. Once it became communal property, it could never be repossessed for private purposes, neoliberalism, ever again. But yeah, I don't know, y'all, if you would like to pick one of the many C through K points proving that socialism is right.
Yeah. So another thing we saw was the restructuring of profit splits with nationalized industries. And Bolivia has always had a very vast history of struggle. In 1952 was actually the first land reform, which was forced through popular revolt, but which was quickly co-opted by the right wing. But what we saw is there's been a lot of times throughout Bolivian history in which stuff has been nationalized and then taken away, but nationalized and used for corruption. But under Evo, hydrocarbons, um, the 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 profit margin that Bolivia had earlier was flipped. So while before Bolivia only received 18% of the profits of the wealth generated from their natural resources, now they received 82%. And all of this went back into reinvesting in the people through education, through public works, through Renta Dignidad, which is supporting the elderly in their rent and their living, working to eliminate literacy. Um, and I think perhaps one thing we should touch on that we haven't touched on first is like what is the actual organizational structure that the Bolivians have. And so what you'll see is everything they do is through their unions. So they have their grassroots unions. Then above that, they have the centrales, which are like confederations. And then above that, they have the federaciones, the federations, which make up are made up of smaller centrales or confederations. And all of these are democratically run with democratic centralism by the people. And these are the people making decisions of, are we going to mobilize? Are we going to blockade? Um, are we going to go on strike? Um, and these are the people making the decisions for whether or not there are demands for like the resignation of the president or if they're going to negotiate. And what you'll often see is that the people are pushing the leaders rather than the leaders pushing the people, and the people are pushing the leaders for the resignation of Rodrigo Paz, and they're pushing for blockades, which they themselves operate and sacrifice much of their time for, only really surviving off of chewing the coca leaf in order to fight off, the hunger and uh, being tired from like 12-hour shifts in the middle of a road. And so another thing you see is the women's and the men's federations, the Bartolinas Sisas and the Tupacataris, which are organizations born out of obviously the struggle of Bartolina Sisa and Tupacatari, and this idea of Chachawarmi, of a cooperation between men and women. Um, and that cooperation is used to directly fight imperialism, to build socialism. And so let's say if the unions, if there's a leader who is straying away from the movement, they can always fall back on their women's and their men's organizations who can also vote to put on blockades, to mobilize, and these have been really crucial in past pre-2006, pre-Evo struggles, like within the gas war and the water war, in the fight to protect Coca. And so the way that you see a lot of these changes under Evo and his arrival to power is through these organizational structures that are incredibly sound and are driven by the bases. They constantly refer to themselves as la clase humilde, or the humble class, and they're the ones who are driving the decisions uh, in order to get a person like Evo, who is one of them, into power, or in order to fight the current right-wing neoliberal government.
I just want to shout out the fact that my oldest daughter is nicknamed after Bartolina Sisa. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Yeah, yeah. And my youngest is nicknamed after Zamba, the Micaela Bastidas Chachua. I never say her name quite correctly, but these women revolutionary leaders who led armies against the Spanish. So I, so salute. So I just want to throw that in there. Yeah, yeah.
And welcome to my life with Jared. You be having the most random. I was like, what? But it's good because the connection your family has, because of where your wife is from and because of where her family still is, like, this is a lot of history that I think people just miss. And that breakdown of how this actually works and why it actually works, and that when you actually have people who are willing to put everything on the line in order to make sure that the thing that they're fighting for happens, there's a material connection to doing something, right? That I think a lot of people here, and in a lot of places, I don't want to just say here, right? Like, it's easy to be a keyboard warrior, right? It's real easy to be a keyboard warrior. It's a whole different world when you actually have to go put your body on the line to get something done. So I appreciated that breakdown. But go ahead. Sorry, I don't know who's next. I don't know what the plan is. I'm just letting y'all cook. So go.
I definitely want to highlight another game that was made under Evo, which was the expelling of the Drug Enforcement Agency in 2008, which was a huge success, I would say. In our conversation with Evo, the translated version, which you can read, Evo specifically says that the United States never forgave Bolivia and him for doing so. There was a DEA base in Chimoré, El Trópico, in the region of Cochabamba, which is the heart of the coca growing unions, the 6 federations where Evo comes from. So this action of expelling them obviously really upset the United States and went directly against their war on drugs, kind of leading them to enlist a level 4 travel advisory on the region, kind of trying to erase the fact that the cocaleros have the right and have autonomy over their land and over their coca leaf. There's this misconstruing of the facts that the right wing and the DEA are doing, kind of insinuating that these cocaleros are narco trafficking, when in fact it is really the right wing that are refining the coca and exporting it. We really need to, understand that this is a very militant and disciplined group of people, and they have a lot of control. They have control over their production and they are very organized over their production, and have ways to try to eliminate something like this from happening. But yeah, that kind of just ties into the misinformation that goes around about the cocaleros, kind of undermining their autonomy, their years and years of autonomy that they have over the land, and their connectedness to the land. This connectedness comes from this understanding that the struggle and this resistance is intergenerational. When we talk to a lot of Indigenous women, they kind of understood that. I mean, when we spoke to many people, but specifically the Indigenous women, had a very tight understanding that they were struggling and they are resisting in order to pass the torch of this fight to their children. They want to emphasize how important the struggle is to their children is, because as long as the right will continue to be the right, which it always will, they will always have to fight. And they just, it was really an honor to see how disciplined they were in emphasizing the importance of resistance from generation to generation.
I think what Sophia and Nico had to say also really ties into something I think that's really important for us to highlight, which is the importance and prevalence of the youth revolutionary left in Bolivia. Because when Nico was talking about the structure of the organizations there, there's like youth student groups and university groups and unions that basically serve as feeders to these more, well, not even more mature, that's not the right word, but these the unions and the centrales and the federations that Nico described. And the task of the youth revolutionary left in Bolivia is very heavy and very great, because something that a lot of elders told us, including the youth, is that before Evo, there were no national rules on education. So only elites had access to schooling, and indigenous rural women suffered the most exclusion from education. And then under Evo, primary school education became a constitutional right. And for the first time, a lot of indigenous rural women were able to finish high school, obtain professional jobs. We heard from several people that Evo policies were responsible for lifting, I think, and I should fact check myself on this one, but I feel like this is correct, and I believe in the gains of the people. So I believe it's 2 million indigenous people were lifted to the middle classes under Evo, from rural poverty. And that's a really big number, because there's 12 million people in Bolivia. So that's a significant portion of, or 12 million people in Bolivia. So that's a significant portion of the population. And, all these mechanisms, what we were talking about, like the land reform, what Nico talked about with resource nationalization, and then what we're going to talk about with like educational access, all of those were deliberately put in place by the grassroots, by the bases, to allow for the continued presence of campesinos and indigenous folks in the government and in these national industries. And the right has been trying to reverse every one of these gains since they took power, which is why having a militant and organized revolutionary youth is so important, because they are not a separate or parallel movement, like how I feel like it is in the US with youth organizations. Like I feel like organizations here identify as youth and think that that's a political standpoint, when that's not inherently a political standpoint, right? Like the youth need to be connected to a larger revolutionary program, right? And in Bolivia, that's very apparent. They're an integrated pillar of the indigenous left. Like we had heard from a woman executive, which these are the people who run, like as Nico was breaking down. So you have the unions, you have the centrales, you have the federations. This woman executive was a part of a federation, which means she's one of the highest authorities in the democratic centralism decision-making process in Bolivia. And something she had said when she was describing the traitor of someone who is not important to mention right now, or the betrayal of someone on the left who's not important to mention right now, is that like she was speaking with deep conviction and deep emotion about how the reason the betrayal hurt is because the elders in the movement really do care about maintaining the intergenerational connectedness of the struggle. They wanted him to succeed, right? They wanted him to become a revolutionary leader, but he acted on personal gain, on impulse, and betrayed the left, right? And I think that's something that's really important to highlight, especially considering how I think in the US, like the way we understand youth movements and then like older movements is like the youth are always trying to like renovate the older movement to get back at the older movement. And the older movement's always trying to diss the youth movement for not being politically disciplined. And there's a lot of antagonism, but in Bolivia, the elders really do want the youth to continue. They see the revolutionary, not just the potential of the youth, but their ability to take the analysis to another level. And that kind of relates to what, the importance about education is that the reason why Evo did so many education reforms is that like there needs to be a historical institutional memory of socialism's achievements, his achievements, the trauma of the coups, and the militant consciousness that stems from Bartolina Sisa and Tupac Katari. That needs to continuously be passed down in order for the struggle to continue. Because the rights strategy is not just to win elections, right? It's also to erase any general understanding of the material conditions and historical consciousness that made indigenous self-governance possible in the first place, and that made the indigenous left form in the first place. And the youth in Bolivia are the ones that are maintaining and developing that revolutionary line. They really believe in the importance of education. And I think that's something that's slept on here, because I think that everyone's always trying to reinvent the wheel in the US and not, think about how theory is an ever evolving thing, right? Like it's not dogmatic, it's not stagnant. Like you don't read something from a book and then apply it routinely, systematically the same every time, right? You read it and then you think about how it applies to your particular material conditions and then you execute. And I feel like that's what I really learned from the revolutionary youth left in Bolivia, is that they study their history rigorously, not to just they study their history rigorously to develop the revolutionary line further, not to diss it or to throw it away.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Nico.
Nah, Sophie, I'll go after you.
Just to like really quickly piggyback off what Zoe was saying, that memory is an incredibly important thing in terms of a people, of a history. In speaking with elders, they, in terms of their connection with their relationship with the youth, they definitely emphasized that it was incredibly important for the youth to have a very solid understanding of their history. That was the only way to be able to move forward. Because in the coup in 2019, right-wing paramilitaries were able to recruit youth and kind of twist the story of Evo's presidency into something antagonistic, something that they needed to fight against. I don't want to expand more without like the proper wording, but just that the paramilitary were able to recruit youth, and just this emphasis that history is incredibly important, memory is incredibly important. Just to quickly put in a sidebar, with my family's connection in Chile, there in Santiago, the capital, there is a museum called El Museo de la Memoria, which is supposed to be kind of a memory capsule of the horrors that went down during the Pinochet years, and how incredibly important it is to kind of to have those resources. And with Latin America's really sharp turn to the right, these resources are trying to take away these things. And so just highlighting how important memory is and understanding history to being able to move forward.
One thing I keep seeing in the chat is couple questions about the coca leaf, and I think understanding coca is really central to understanding not only the organization but to understanding the anti-imperialism in Bolivia. So pre-2006, the U.S. was forcing countries in Latin America to institute a complete eradication policy of the coca leaf. And this is the U.S., an imperial power, trying to impose a punishment on the poor who have grown this leaf for thousands of years and depend on it in order to work the land, travel large distances. They have it with their tea. You can think about, in some sense, similar to like coffee, but with more of a spiritual, it's more rooted in spirituality. Amautas, which are spiritual guides, read the coca leaves in times of struggle in order to give readings to people to keep going in times of the blockades. And so these leaves are incredibly important to people's daily lives. We met a man who had walked 7 days from Cochabamba to La Paz, and on his way back had not eaten for 2 days. And the only way he stayed alive was because he was chewing coca leaves. And he went all the way to La Paz because of his anti-imperialist convictions on foot in order to demonstrate against Rodrigo Paz's government. So to understand their resistance, you have to understand the significance of this leaf, which people were killed in front of their farms for, which people were innocently abused and raped by drug enforcement agents um, in El Trópico Cochabamba in Bolivia, not only because of a farce of narco trafficking, but also because of the central role that it plays within the organization. Every single time you're seeing a leader on the radio, you're seeing them chew coca. When we were there, when we were on the radio, we were chewing coca because we were in solidarity with the Bolivians and with their relationship to their land, which has existed for thousands of years before any imperialist or colonial conquest. And so understanding it as, not only a tool, but something that's central to their understanding of the land and anti-imperialism, it's way more than just a leaf. And they will tell you coca es vida, that our coca plant is life. And so I just wanted to clarify that because when you're there, you're able to see that connection to the land, which clearly informs their socialism, and has clearly informed so many of their gains. So I just wanted to touch on that real quick.
Can I just ask a question real quick? And thank
Yeah,
you.
of course.
Thank you for that. But this is, so when we talk about the US trying to determine, like, we want all the farmers to end your growing. Is there also, because I truly don't know anything about this history, but is there also them trying to end it as a structure for regular working farmers, but actually take over that farmland so that they can control the growth and sell it and distribute it the way they want to? Because I don't think, like, I'm thinking about how the US actually profits off of drugs while they claim that they're warring upon drugs. And in my head, all of this is actually them trying to take over the farmland so they can control the distribution, the growth, and everything for the coca leaf, versus them actually trying to end the growth of the. Am I wrong on this? Because I'm guessing because I really don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think something that was like common knowledge when we were there, when we were talking with people in Cochabamba, and I forget the exact book, but he wasn't on the left or anything, but there was like an ex-DEA agent.
La Guerra Falsa.
La Guerra Falsa. Yeah, the false war against coca. And like you'll see how when coca is confiscated, maybe they'll like burn like 50% of it, but they're pocketing the other 50% in order to flip it and make money off of it. So the only people who get punished are the campesinos, are la clase humilde. And these punishments, like just massacres in front of people's farms, people trying to stand up for their farms, for a plant that's so deeply spiritual and rooted in their struggle. Yeah, I mean, I think also just the US, they have no reservations about enacting violence to accomplish some false means. So eradication, which basically means the persecution of cocaleros and cocaleras, is just a step that the US is willing to take. It's just a line that they're willing to have, and you see the same thing in Colombia and Peru and other places. It's very common.
Thank you. Appreciate it. That historical references, and it's La Guerra Falsa, right? This is a book.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm about to look this bad boy up. Thank you.
Should we
Oh yes, cook, girl. Listen, y'all, cook.
I mean,
let it go, Zoe. Let it go.
let it rip. Let it rip. No, I mean, like in a real way, I think, I'm not trying to center my nerves in all of this. I feel a lot less nervous now, but I was told by a comrade before I got on, because I was like, something I've been having a lot of ruminations about recently is how to be an effective international comrade. And, because I feel like, my time in Bolivia really radicalized me and made me a more deeply committed member of the anti-imperial left. So I just really, I'm like, I want to do my conveyance of this so right and so well. And I feel like, you kind of can't really do that also without situating, because I think there's a lot of misrepresentation of what the blockades are doing and what their purpose is, and not just U.S. right-wing media or U.S. mainstream media, but also Bolivian right-wing media. It's wild, actually, because when we were staying in Cochabamba, every day when we would go downstairs, they were playing the right-wing mainstream media, because I think you got to also talk about the city being a bastion for right-wing politics, just in general, like across the globe. Like, I think the city is marketed as a place where, different perspectives come to meet. There's so much multiculturalism, yada, 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 right? And I think Two Black and Russell Mawat do a really good job explicating this, and laundering Black rage. But the city is really usually a bastion for financial capital and for the elite national class, right? So when we were staying in the city of Cochabamba, right, not in the tropical region where, like Nico said, that's where the bases, that's where the revolutionary power lies. The place that we were staying at was like playing constantly just a bunch of lies and slander about the reasons behind the blockade. They were, and I think this is with due suspicion. A older comrade of ours who has decades of experience in this struggle had told us that they pay the right-wing media in Bolivia, they pay campesinos to lie on TV about, oh, the blockades are doing this to my family. Like, I can't get access to XYZ egg or XYZ food because of these blockades. And I think it's such an amusing point, because the right only cares about people starving and dying and all this when they're trying to misrepresent revolutionary struggle, when they're trying to misrepresent the violence and the strategies of revolution, organized force and strategies of revolutionary struggle, right? Then all of a sudden the right cares about humanitarian aid and all this garbanzo beans. But like, in actuality, they could not care less, right? And the orientation of the blockades, and this is not the full extent of it, right? Because I think that people in the US who are like liberal sympathetics want to construct the blockades being principally about, oh, all they're calling for is the resignation of Rodrigo Paz, right? They're not just calling for the resignation of Rodrigo Paz, they're also calling for a return of the development of the socialist project. That's what they're calling for, right? They want, like, Evo was democratically elected for a fourth time in 2019, but then the OAS, the Organization of American States, U.S. Imperial Shill organization, did this false audit saying that there were irregularities in the election. No, it's just that they were surprised, probably, that people overwhelmingly voted in favor for Evo to be president for a fourth time. And they said that there needed to be new elections. And that's how we got Áñez, the right-wing lawyer from Benin, who was president of Bolivia from 2019 to 2020 and led some of the most horrendous massacres on the indigenous left, the Sencada and Sacaba massacres. We talked to plenty of people who were survivors of the massacres, and actually had a lot to say about there being like humanitarian rights reports on the massacres that misrepresented things. Like they were basically trying to foment like discontent between the women and the men by saying, oh, the women were behind the men in the massacres, and then the women who we talked to were like, no, the women and men were marching. Like Nico said, there's this politics of cooperative ownership of the struggle, right? Both men and women, like many indigenous leaders that we were talking to were like, men and women complement each other, right? Like they complement each other, the revolutionary struggle. There cannot be a full revolutionary struggle without the inclusion of both, right? And they were clarifying and saying, no, like women and men were both fighting side by side in the Sencada and Sacaba massacres. But so you have Áñez, who, is just a right-wing force of terror. And then you get what is supposed to be the return of socialism under Arce in 2020. And this is obviously, like, again, the reason that Agnes was even booted out in the first place is because of the strength of the revolutionary indigenous Bolivian left. She kept postponing elections, but people kept saying, no, we need you out. And they did blockades and met, and organized against that. But then, yeah, in 2020, we get Arce, who is, and this is a tendency that I think we all know very well in the US. When liberals hijack revolutionary movements, is basically what happened in this situation. Arce basically hijacked the party that Evo created and founded MAS, the movement for socialism in Bolivia, and turned it into like a liberal left, like petty bourgeois intelligentsia party that basically betrayed the indigenous like bases, the poor indigenous bases, and was another repeat of Agnes in terms of targeting like grassroots leaders and bribing them to support him, to lend him political legitimacy. He even staged a fake coup to like regain popularity because there was like economic discontent and all these things. And yeah, that was a massive blow to a lot of people, because there was this right-wing force of terror, and then there was this election of MAS that was supposed to, reclaim some sort of control of the tide, but then the betrayal was rife. And so I put that all into context to say that this is why the blockades against PAS have been so long lasting. This is the political precision they're coming from, right? They're coming from a political precision of like, we have had sham leaders for now almost 8 years straight, right? And all we want is the return of our sovereignty to develop our socialist project. So I just really want to push back just tentatively against the notion that all they're calling for is the resignation of Rodrigo Paz, because they're pushing it back against this larger legacy of right-wing meddling and liberal co-optation and obstruction of what the true revolutionary character of the Bolivian left struggle is, which is land liberation and socialism. So yeah.
I was gonna provide perhaps some more details on a lot of the stuff that Zoe is saying, because I think there are so many details that get overlooked. So for example, when we're looking in 2019 at the coup, the OAS, although they had this audit, they themselves congratulated Evo for winning the election in a like now deleted tweet. And the way that this coup was orchestrated, which was basically an unspoken alliance between the OAS, the United States, and right-wing paramilitaries in Bolivia, these motorcycle gangs called cruceñistas. I forget exactly the term, but they had been preparing for over 2 years, and they're funded by the business elite of cities like Cochabamba, Santa Cruz, which is the most right-wing city, in La Paz. And so the way that they were able to enact control of the country through terror in 2019 was one with the clouding of the OAS over election, but their on the ground terror and violence over explicitly indigenous targets within different places like Cochabamba, like La Paz. And so what we were seeing was not only attacks on the leaders in the chain of command, where these motorcycle gangs are burning down houses, are raping relatives of leaders in order to force resignations, but also attacking women dressed in traditional indigenous clothing, not allowing them to enter plazas in the street as to not allow for mass mobilizations. So blocking off places which are usually sites of revolutionary action, of mobilization, because it's not like the people didn't know what was happening. They saw what was happening. They were terrified, but they're also mobilizing against, trying to mobilize against the people enacting the coup. And so because of this cooperation between the US, the OAS, and the paramilitaries. You see Janine Áñez come into power in 2019, where she rules by decree, as Zoe was saying, and as Zoe was saying, using the excuses of COVID to put off elections. And one of the things with Arce that you see that immediately gave away that he was not on the side of the Bolivian people was the continuation of Agnes's policies, especially in the persecution of movement leaders, which we're still seeing to this day. So right now, Rodrigo Paz, the current president of Bolivia, has about 90 arrest warrants for top union leaders across the country. And there's an explicit collaboration with these motorcycle gangs between the police and these gangs, these paramilitaries, in order to go after these leaders. So I think something that unfortunately Arce, because he came from MAS, the party of Evo, people thought he was gonna continue in Evo's footsteps, and it was perhaps misrepresented in the international media how close he actually was to the people. But one of the things you see is a continuation from Áñez to Luis Arce to Rodrigo Paz is the enactment of neoliberal policies, the persecution of the poor and the indigenous, and an explicit target of union leadership to try and break down the organizations that the indigenous have spent so long building up. And I think one thing to keep in mind is that unity between the indigenous is not a given. There's 36 different indigenous nations within Bolivia. And so it's something that they've fought for, something that they've spent such a long time to establish, and something that the right-wing governments are constantly trying to sabotage and cause divisions. And so you see this through line from Áñez to Arce and to right now with Rodrigo Paz, and it's impossible to not it's impossible to distinguish between them because they all are serving the interests of the United States and the rich capitalists who live within Bolivia, who are like, for example, there's a Croatian Milinkovic who is pushing for the privatization of the communally owned land. So there's an explicit targeting and trying to break down the revolutionary organizations of the indigenous. And I think, as Zoe was saying, that's why you see people come out with such force in these blockades, and there's such a strategy as well to the blockades. It's not 100 overnight, but it's slowly encroaching and surrounding cities. And it's a tool, a weapon of the people, in order to enact, to have their voice heard, and to correct the mistake of leaders who might, or who the right, excuse me, who the right wing might be trying to buy off, or who could perhaps betray the people. And so they're able to supersede perhaps stuff that could cause breakdowns in the movement with the bases. So
Yeah, I thank you guys. Incredible contributions. I just kind of wanted to, at this point now, maybe put in a little bit of context about the current president, Rodrigo Paz, and just how incredibly unpopular he is. When we talk to indigenous women campesinos, they kind of emphasize that even the people that voted for him at this point don't support him anymore, just because he had lied so much about this prosperity that he could give Bolivia, and just basically did the opposite as soon as he took office. So a little bit of background about him. Well, first of all, he's like constitutionally not classified, not qualified to be president because he was born in Spain to a Spanish mother. And he has a familial legacy. His family legacy is of the right. His father and great uncle were presidents of Bolivia, and they were very much aligned with the United States' neoliberal agenda, very much aligned with the DEA. Um, the DEA's kind of force against the cocaleros. His father specifically worked with Bush to spread this war on drugs against the cocaleros, who have been cultivating this land, as we have said, for thousands of years, to protect their land, their people, their communities. He's been repeatedly quoted as saying that only privatization and opening up to foreign investments would be the fix to Bolivia's problems, which, as we spoke about before, was kind of the opposite of what Evo was trying to do. And what he said that the United States would never forgive him for. And so, in just seeing the ways in which the right wing and the United States are kind of connecting now, I hear that like repeated in my head, essentially. He's also joined Trump in the Escudo de las Americas, the Shield of Americas, with the 12 right-wing Latin American presidents, which I had talked about before was like this sharp turn to the right from the United States, which is kind of widely interpreted as a Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine. So kind of a continuation, today's neoliberal imperialist continuation of the Monroe Doctrine. So kind of the United States and Trump have kind of spread this narrative of narco trafficking, political unrest, gang violence, and have attributed that to the left, to these blockades, when that really has never ever been the case. I think Nico wrote some things about some specific decrees.
Yeah. So a lot of the progress that was seen under Evo, Rodrigo Paz actually promised really not to mess with. And his vice presidential candidate, Lara, is perhaps the reason why he received a lot of the vote. Also, it has to do with the explicit lawfare and the stealing of the mass party from Evo, and it's giving to the traders of Luis Arce and Andronico, and then also the barring of Evo from running for another election. And these are electoral tribunals, which are working this lawfare in order to deny the voice and the will of the people. And so the indigenous people went about all the proper steps of creating their own party to run their own candidate, just for the electoral tribunal not to allow Evo to run. And these tribunals are appointed by right-wing politicians and are often bought off in when you trace their bank accounts, and you're seeing $100,000 in a Panamanian bank account of one of these judges. Like these people are very easily bought off. And then another thing that you see is Rodrigo Paz. He promised not to take on any foreign loans, explicitly promised that to the people, and within a month was already exploring his options with the World Bank, with the IMF. And then there's three perhaps like major crises or decrees that the people decided to mobilize. We have the decree 5503, which outlined the selling off, the privatization of key sectors which were nationalized under Evo. This includes hydrocarbons. This includes some of the most essential ones, like Intel, the internet company, the state-run internet company that provided internet to tons of people who previously did not have access to internet and electricity under Evo. And then also BOA, which is Bolivia's nationalized airline. And they're trying to gut these nationalized industries which serve and work directly for the poor, and just sell them off to the highest bidder. And that was 5503. You also see um, an immense interest from Elon Musk in Bolivia's lithium reserves. Bolivia has some of the largest lithium reserves in this world, and they're immensely valuable to people like Elon Musk who run our government. Like, no qualms about it. Uh, it's scary how literal of a phrase that is. Um, but also you see the decree 1720, which was going after the TCOs, Tierra Comunitaria Originaria, the collectivized land, and was explicitly architected by Malinkovic, who is a Croatian um, terrateniente, which means like really large landowner in Bolivia. And he explicitly designed this decree in order to privatize the parcels so that they could be, one, taken away by a bank, or two, sold off to a foreign entity. Two policies which were implemented under Evo explicitly to protect the sovereignty of the indigenous people and protect the sovereignty of their land. Um, and then the third thing that you see is something that they call the gasolinazo, which is the horrific quality of gasoline. Um, People's cars overwhelmingly have been responding very poorly to the gas. Not to mention that the subsidies on the gas have been lifted, meaning that gas prices are, one, extremely unaffordable. Two, people must wait in lines for like 3 to 5 days in order to get gas. And three, the gas doesn't even properly work, and the poorest people in the country are having to spend up to 10,000 bolivianos trying to get their cars fixed. And so the people are feeling the violence in their lives of these neoliberal policies, of um, the selling off of the people's resources to the highest bidder. Um, and so I think when you talk to people, that's something they'll point to, but none of those things ever exist without an anti-imperialist, without a socialist framework. All of those things exist under their understanding, their analysis of the effect of these policies as part of larger structures which are trying to exploit and disempower them because of the success that they had under the Evo years from 2006 to 2019. And so, like, unfortunately, what you'll see on as Zoe was talking about earlier, on the gas is not fully processed, or is it because, yeah, I think the gas has been cut with some substances that have damaged people's cars, and you'll see people come up with crazy solutions to get their cars to run. I forget, I don't know if Zoe Sophia remember, but we were like riding in someone's car, and they're like, "Yeah, I just threw in some of this and it got the car to run." I forgot, but maybe if we remember, we'll get another chance. But yeah, so as I was saying, unfortunately, when you're seeing a lot of the international coverage on this, you're seeing people say, "Oh yeah, well, we're just hungry, or the gas is bad," or um, they're trying to privatize the land, or they're trying to sell off key resources without an actual anti-imperialist analysis behind that, as if those things just exist without people who are explicitly enriching themselves off of these policies. And what you see when you talk to the people is that, no, wait, they're understand that they are explicitly fighting imperialism, that they're fighting neoliberalism, and that they're fighting for their socialism. And that's something that, unfortunately, maybe doesn't seem to come through enough. But I think being there, something that they wanted us to share is that that is central to their analysis. Sure, the mothers have, like, they will say that um their children are going hungry and they don't have enough. They're only having like one meal a day, but they say that and that their responsibility as a mother is their responsibility to fight against this imperialism, to fight against neoliberalism. And like, for example, the man that we met who had walked 7 days from Cochabamba to La Paz and had gone 2 days without eating, just chewing coca, he expressed his commitment to his family as something that he had to materially show up for in La Paz to fight against what he called explicitly a neoliberal and imperialist structures. Um, so I think that's something that's central, but perhaps not talked about enough in the struggle in Bolivia and perhaps in the international coverage as well.
It's so wild when you consider. So our beef here all the time is how shitty the media is, right? And how this consistent portrayal of these things to make it appear as if the revolution is the problem, the people are the problem, the workers are the problem. It's everybody but the people who are actually the problem. And of course, because mainstream media, especially here on the West and in the US and the UK, are so deeply vested in ensuring that nothing changes, right? So whenever I always like to take these opportunities when people bring up how things are actually working within a place. Like somebody in the chat was like, wait, what, 3 to 5 days? Like no one would ever imagine having to sit and wait for days to get something that is necessary in order for you to actually be able to do the thing that you're supposed to do. And it's not shocking to learn that they're doing all kinds of crap to the gas because it happens here too, and people just don't realize it. People don't understand that as gas prices go up, the quality of the gas goes down. You have to go get gas more because your gas actually, it literally burns off faster. It's all part of the like this is all part of the process. This is what they do. But this is this is fascinating for me. Like this real true view of what it is like within these different places and how it is always at the core of it. Always at the core of it is capitalism and imperialism. It never fails. It never fails. It's always capitalism and imperialism, and they work hand in hand. One feeds the other, like however you want to put it. But I just wanted to point that out. And I'm glad you brought up Elon Musk because I don't think people understand how truly like maniacal this whole situation with these trillionaires and how they are making their money and how they are literally they're profiting off the death of people all over the world. And very few people, I think, understand the connections of all of these things. And so I just wanted to jump in and say thank you for breaking that down. Where we going next, y'all? Cook.
I want to say a little bit something I don't think I shared, but I wrote a little something about a Mother's Day vigil that we went to when we were in El Tropico. When we were in the Tropico of Cochabamba, they so kindly allowed us to attend a vigil where, I think Nico was talking about, I just want to tie this point in about how like mothers, they were loyal to, being a mother to their children, but also in the same exact vein, running parallel to being a mother to their children, they also understand that they're a mother to the revolution. They're a mother to the resistance. We heard from Mama Leonida Zurita Vargas, who kind of outlined, we attended like during one of our first days there. So we were kind of just starting to get a grasp on this unnamed Guerra de Coca, the war on coca, which we kind of outlined before, the different massacres that occurred by the right wing in tandem with the DEA in the United States. But kind of how she said specifically that while she was getting ready in the morning, her children ran up to her and were saying Happy Mother's Day. And she said like she thanked them, but she was like, we need to get to base. We need to figure out what's going on, essentially, because while we were there, they opened up to us while they were in the middle of mobilizing these hundreds of blockades when they were at their peak. And so, just wanting to highlight how also embedded women are in the resistance, how embedded the youth are, and just kind of this consciousness, this understanding, kind of like I said before about their history, essentially. Mama Leonida, she was the one who spoke to us about how a comrade was shot point blank in the face during one of the massacres, I believe the massacre of Eterasama, which took place, I believe, on April 28th of 1997. Essentially, the DEA, a comrade was kind of essentially on her knees pleading for them not to strike down her coca leaf, the coca tree, the coca plant. And they continued to shoot her point blank. And something that was very powerful was that she kind of continued going in this, she was saying that this type of deaths are not in vain. They continue to push us to the struggle. Despite the losses, she knew that there is continuity in the struggle from generation to generation, from person to person. So yeah, that was something that was very powerful in our attending of the vigil.
I feel like that testimony of something that we personally experienced, again, kind of relates back to, I guess, the overarching point I was trying to make at the beginning about why delegations are really important, in the sense that like you become a firsthand witness to, the depth of the struggle in a place, but then also right-wing assassination plots and the extent of U.S. collaborationism. And I feel like you can now, when you go to a delegation, you can personally attest to the fact that the left in the country that you're supporting is fighting against imperial domination and severe repression. Because another thing to know is when we were staying in a neighboring city, there was a coordinated blackout that occurred, that many grassroots sources widely believe to be a deliberate maneuver to like basically obfuscate the landing of what I think 200 DEA agents on a U.S. Hercules aircraft, with the intent of either meddling with or assassinating Evo. That happened while we were there. And people on the ground had a strong reason to believe that that was what was going to happen. And I feel like being able to carry this information back to the US is incredibly important, in the sense that, there's so many lies spread on the media here. And sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is to, convey these firsthand testimonies and experiences to say, oh, the right-wing media is saying this about Bolivia, but I actually talked to a comrade in Bolivia who said that this is not true, and here's concrete evidence proving that. Or, oh, the right-wing media is saying this, but I have a dated journal entry saying that on May 29th, this happened, right? So I feel like, yeah, it's really important to collect this information, and to present it as Sophia did. And I also think just like to witness the mass support behind the struggle for communitarian socialism in Bolivia is key, because I think that there's a lot of propaganda spread that socialism is not a popular like what is the word I'm looking for here? Like socialism is not a popular alternative, right? Like that the people do not yearn for socialism. That actually the reason why people elected Paz is because he espoused this wonk belief of capitalism for all, and I'm going to make capitalism work for us all, or whatever that means. And people fall into this trap of thinking that, oh, like, well, all we need to do is reform, right? But then when you go to a place that deeply the revolutionary left there, the masses there deeply believe in socialism as a viable alternative, as a viable project to pursue, it really shows that is a real alternative, right? Because I think that like something that we all have talked about is that the level of organization in Bolivia has really inspired us to bring that level of organization to the US, because the US, is it's a very defeated place in the sense that, people are out here believing socialism is, well, I shouldn't say ex individual, but like, people are out here believing that socialism is like represented accurately in like AOC or Zohar Mamdani or things like this, right? And in reality, like what socialism is it's a unique experiment that has, yes, it has a base bone theory, right? Revolutionary masses, revolutionary base, revolutionary culture, but that it is tailored to your particular context, right? Like socialism manifests materially differently in different ways. And I think witnessing how the Bolivian indigenous left has interpreted and made socialism work for them. Exactly. Yes, it's a process. That's why Marxism is called the scientific method. It's not considered, it's not a totality of operations, right? It's a scientific method that you're supposed to apply to your particular economic and social conditions in order to bring it closer to the socialist future you want to envision, right? And I feel like that is exactly why we constantly are harping about the intense discipline of the revolutionary left in Bolivia, because they have interpreted socialism to their context, or they're fighting to interpret socialism to their particular context. So yeah.
There was a question earlier, if y'all don't mind, just because I want to make sure, and you answered this a little bit, but it's a direct question. So what forms of political education play out in the cities and villages, not only just to counter the right, but to foster revolutionary struggle? And there's a reason for this question, and I want to shout out Robert specifically, because they're always saying like, okay, so but what do we do? Like, who's doing it? How is it working? How is it done right? What do we do? So if you could address this, and I know I'm probably messing up the flow, but we got like 20 something minutes left, so I wanted to make sure that I got the question asked. So thank you.
I think I'll talk about this a little bit. But I would say, hold on, I'm about to put a link in the chat. But the Radio Causa Chuncoca, there are like a bunch of radios that do the work of communicating not only the history but updates in organizational structure and strategy to the people. And these are direct shows with Evo, with governors like Leonardo Loza, with union leaders that are constantly talking and discussing not only their history, like Sophia mentioned, on Mother's Day, rather than have some sort of really big celebration. They actually had a vigil, like Sophia was talking about, and they were talking about the history, about the women who have died in struggle, starting with Bartolina Sisa, and commenting um, on their experiences, on loved ones who had died in the struggle. And so you see this kind of political education that is kind of grown out of the union structure, but also the family unit and the radios. And so what you see is this Mother's Day stream was live streamed not only on YouTube, but where they have most of their support on Facebook. And these videos get so much attention, so much access, to the point in which it's definitely being surveilled by US imperialist intelligentsia, because as soon as as soon as you post something, there's bot comments from far right bots that are immediately posting just lies, calling them narco traffickers, and stuff like that. And so their communication, their structure of um of reaching people through the radio is that powerful that the government is constantly going after it. The government is playing like gringo music on their radio stations, trying to overpower the radio waves of the radio, and yet what you see is that they're able to successfully use their radio to basically speak to one another. And you'll see that one time when we were passing through one of the blockades, we were with people from the radio, and they interviewed people at the blockades, and what the people are saying is fuerza compañeros, like strength, giving strength to everyone else who's at the other points of blockade, encouraging people to join and to take over the roads and enact the will of the people through, you know, their tools. And I think I can't emphasize enough really the power that the radio has, um, and the persecution that is also facing as a result of that. Yeah, I don't know if Zoe and Sophia want to add on that. I'm gonna try and send it in the chat real quick.
Can you just say real quick? Can you say another word about the that media environment, the role of radio versus you know, digital streaming and podcasts? Is traditional terrestrial radio still playing as big a role? Because I think sometimes in this country we're convinced of its diminishing role, but it's often cited, even in this country as still being a primary source, particularly for working class Black and brown communities. But yeah, could you just say a quick word about that?
Yeah, it absolutely is. But it also they adapt, you know, fairly quickly when the government is trying to overpower their radio waves in cities like Cochabamba. They're on Facebook, they're on WhatsApp, they're on YouTube. Um, and so while yes, people are listening to the radio traditionally, like in their cars and at the blockades, people obviously have phones, and so they're getting the latest updates on Facebook from union leaders across the country. And you know, everyone's so well informed because it's not just the top union leaders who are talking, but people from just the sindicales, the smallest unions, talking about their specific situation. And you know, like when you scroll through the YouTube channel, you're mainly what you're seeing is, you know, encouragement, like come on, brothers, sisters, we're fighting for you guys, we're fighting for each other, we're fighting against imperialism at these blockades. And so one of the big emphasis of it is to keep up the spirit of the people within this struggle. You see a lot of music as well, revolutionary music on the radio. And so yeah, I'm trying to send that link in there. So thanks, Zoe and Sophia.
You might not be able to send it in the direct chat, Nico. So if you drop it in the private chat, I can also share it. So whatever works. If it works, you're good. If not, drop it in the private chat, and I'll share it.
The radio is incredible. Kind of just echoing what Nico was saying about Radio Causa Chuncoca, which I don't want to butcher the translation, but it means something about uplifting the coca leaf. But essentially, everyone gets to hear a little bit about where they're from, what's happening where they are, because there are different representatives essentially around everywhere in Bolivia, where there's a stream happening. Like Nico was saying, there was a sense of camaraderie. These people, they know exactly who their enemy is. They know they're in a fight against imperialism. They're in a fight against neoliberalism, against capitalism, against U.S. intervention. And they speak with each other, to each other, with, like I said, a level of camaraderie. They refer to each other as hermano or hermana, brother or sister, the same way that they all refer to Evo. They call him brother Evo, hermano Evo. That is essentially his name in for the people. And when people expand on that, they kind of talk about how, you know, he never betrayed the people. There have been many traitors in their ranks, but he put his life on the line for the people. And because of that, he gained that level of trust. And now the radio is able to kind of regurgitate those points of, you know, the connectedness, the camaraderie between people, and just kind of like how Nico was saying, just giving strength during these times of great pressure on the blockades. Zoe, if you want to pick up.
Sorry, I was trying to find my unmute button. No, I was just going to add things that we heard directly from some of the people that we had the pleasure and honor of having conversation with, related to the topic of political education and how, I guess, not even institutionalized, but how it's carried out on a communal scale or on a massive scale, is in the cities and in the rural areas. Again, to highlight the importance of the youth revolutionary left in propagating political education, they organize through their unions or their groups. So if you're in a rural area, you organize through the unions as a youth, and then if you're in the city, you organize through a group. And it's all supposed to be very organic, right? Like the way that you come to consciousness is through being a part of your collective, right? It's through being immersed in actionable steps towards socialism in Bolivia. And I believe one organizer had, it is Radio Causwachun Coca, for the person who just super chatted. They said, please repeat the Bolivian radio's name and where to listen. There's a link in the chat for it too. They are involved in, like, the youth are involved in these organizations, and these organizations teach the youth how to effectively organize. For example, we were talking, I think Nico briefly mentioned his name, Loza. He's the governor currently of Cochabamba. And the youth came out in droves to protect his vote, because he basically won, I think, like he actually won 45% of the vote, but then the right-wing mayor, snubbed in and said, he only won 41 or something like this, right?
I think they might have won, like, when they did their own count above 50%, and I think they gave them like 41%. So the unions, they before the elections, like, they will tally their votes to make sure there isn't fraud, and if there is, that they can protect, as I was saying.
Yes, and this lends itself to the political education aspect, in the sense that youth are literally taught how to become electoral observers to protest fraudulent undercounting. So they had said that the youth were involved as electoral observers. They counted the votes. They documented any irregularities they saw. They spent 7 days protesting any of the fraudulent undercounting. And then also we had they had mentioned that social organizations sent delegates from their youth subgroups. 5 people per day were sent in to observe and defend the Loza vote for 24 hours at a time, and then they would trade off with other people. So I think that this hands-on experience also testifies to what political education can look like, right? Because I think people in the U.S., and I think this is because we have a very deeply anti-intellectual culture. People in the U.S. think that political education is just, I have to sit down and read book. What? I have to sit down and read book. And it's like, okay, yes, it's important to sit down and read books. So let's get that squared away, right? But then also the other aspect of it is you can achieve political education by being actively immersed in struggle. Like you can gain perceptual knowledge, yes, through your identity, right? But the only way that you're going to gain revolutionary knowledge or understand how to revolutionarily apply theory is through practical engagement and the merging of theory and praxis, right? And I think that's what they do very beautifully on the indigenous left. Because another organizer that we met with had also talked about how in Villa Tunari, which is I think it's in the tropical region, they have this youth summer camp or youth summer political education camp that's from 9 to 5, where youth get taught historical lessons about the struggle and are, you know, talked about you just don't read Beloved. That's funny. That I think Hiram says that. Anyways, but yeah, that you're taught basically about the rich history of the struggle, about the rich history of the culture and all these things. And the whole point of doing that is so that the youth have a robust sense of, oh, this is the longer history I come from, right? Because I think the other thing about political education, right, it's not just about knowing where you're going or about getting people to develop an understanding of a trajectory, but it's also about getting them to understand the origins of the struggle, right? And the way you get people to understand the origins of a struggle is by highlighting the contradictions. And I think that's what they do very beautifully on RKC. They are constantly highlighting the contradictions between their political position as the revolutionary left and all the other political positions that exist in Bolivia that are either bastardizations of that or are the right. So I think that, yeah, regarding political education, I think they do that very beautifully. And I think they also do it very naturally in the sense that, like Sophia had said, mothers are really what perpetuate the ongoing knowledge and maintenance of knowledge of the revolution in Bolivia. They tell, like, I remember when we were talking to Mama Jesusa Leonalda, while they were talking to us for hours, their children were present, like Leonaldo's children were present. Like one of them was literally sitting on her lap while we were talking to her about the history of the Sincada and Sacaba massacres. Like children are not completely occluded from hearing the actual rich revolutionary truth of the history and struggle in Bolivia. And I feel like that's something that happens in the US, is that, you know, children are not, because also, you know, the vast majority of racialized and colonized people in the US are domestically colonized, right? Like we're a diaspora, we're divorced from, you know, our roots, right? We don't have this ancestral knowledge of, oh, like, yeah, my mom was alive to witness this revolutionary struggle that radicalized her and made her very anti-right. Like we don't have that legacy. The legacy we have instead is, oh, my dad, you know, was an Amazon warehouse worker, and then before him, perhaps there was my dad who, you know, was a small business owner, and then maybe several decades before that there was slavery, but then I don't remember anything else, right? So, but in Bolivia, there's like you are literally maybe only 1 or 2 generations away from the heart of the struggle. Like you are not very divorced. Like the youth are not historically divorced from the struggle chronologically at all. Like it's not like the youth are existing in a time where revolution has completely dissipated or revolutionary fervor is at a low, like how it is in the US throughout different epochs of history, right? Like I think so many youth in the US forget about the rich history of the anti-war movement in the 1960s and 1970s because we're like, oh, that's 50 years ago. The material conditions are different. And it's like, okay, I mean, some of the contradictions are slightly different, yes, but like the brute basis of fighting against the imperial war is not. It's not different, not at all. And I think that there's a clear understanding of that in Bolivia because they don't see them. And I think this also has to do with an indigenous knowledge or indigenous perception of time, like their cosmovisions, their understanding of history. Like it's very in flux, right? It's not like, oh, this period happened and now this is a new period, right? Which I think, you know, is how modern history or like how colonial history teaches us to think, is like, oh, this time happened and then it ended sharply. Everything that had to do with that time, socially, economically, culturally, that ended, and now we're in this completely new era. And that's not the case in Bolivia. The way that people understand history and culture is that it's ongoing. It's an ongoing development. The colonial era of the Spanish invasion is not distinct from the colonial era of the Republican period, which is not distinct from the colonial undercuttings of the current neoliberal period, right? It's not sectioned off neatly as a completely different type of neoliberalism or a completely different type of capitalism or a completely different type of colonialism, right? It's seen as this is the continuation. What we're fighting against right now is the continuation of a decades, centuries long colonial project. And as a result, we need to have, like, as a result, the youth have that understanding because they're seeing themselves as part of an ongoing struggle, right? Not a struggle that stopped at one point and that their parents used to fight, but there was like a break in time and now it's completely different. It's not completely different. So yeah, I think that's an important point to note, that I think the way that the indigenous left in Bolivia conceptualize time and their understanding of like what, like how capitalism and colonialism have not just, you know, they haven't neatly broken apart, right? It wasn't like colonialism, then capitalism, right? It was colonialism transitioning into capitalism, transitioning into neoliberalism, right? And it's an onward march, right? It's a progressive march in history. So
yeah, I think that there's a clear understanding of that we lack here in the U.S. We think that we always think that we're in new eras, but it's like this has always existed. This is the primary contradiction, which is imperialism and capitalism, has always existed. It has always existed. That is what all economic and social relations are based on. So yeah.
You just don't read, beloved.
I knew it was coming. I definitely 100%. And I think this really tracks back to, in part, our educational system, what you said earlier about Evo changing the system to ensure that education was something that was available to multiple people and it wasn't limited. And here, where we supposedly have free public education, but the free public education is always delineated and structured by these other systemic problems, right? Which is to make sure that people continue this idea that it is sectioned off, that there are these periods of time. There's period of Reconstruction, and there's this period, and there's this period. And then, they make it so that it appears as if there isn't a natural flow in time between history. Like Dhoruba always says, like, history doesn't repeat, it rhymes, right? And I always have to remind myself of that whenever I start talking about things, because, we have that tendency to be like, history repeats itself. But it's not a true repetition, because it is a constant flow of change, always within the box of the systems that are created by the structures here that are built strictly to ensure that capitalism, imperialism, empire, all these things remain in place, right? So I am fascinated. I'm deeply fascinated. And when I read that particular essay about the conversation that you had, and that the 5-year-old was sitting in her lap through the whole conversation, and I started thinking about how we tend to send children out the room, right? These are adults talking. Go sit somewhere, go play, go do, you know what I mean? Like this idea that children don't have to be engaged in these conversations in order to really make sure that they grow with this revolutionary spirit that we want our children. And I definitely want my child. I don't want to speak for everybody, but that I want my child to grow with. And so there's an interesting thing there with regard to history and what is taught and passed on. And people need to understand that this is why our history books change, right? This is why in the public educational system in the United States, the history books change. If you're telling, like, it's always a shift depending on what it is that the system wants you to understand about history, right? So every time they want to change what they're teaching about history, they just change the book. Right? Like if you're telling a true story, if you're really recollecting what happened in the historical context, you never have to change the book. The book can just reprint with the same exact language, the same exact information. And then as books fall apart, the information doesn't have to change, but they always have to change the information because the goal is to ensure that people don't fully understand the history. So it's all built into the problems because they want folks here to remain ignorant. They don't want people to understand what happened before them. They don't want there to be any clarity about what really colonialism was, right? They don't want there to be any clarity about what actual slavery was, and that it wasn't that people came here on ships voluntarily and worked for free, right? So there are all these things that just, this is so, I can't wait for y'all to come back. We're gonna have to figure this out, because I feel like you only got through like 3 pages of 7, and so there's more we need to do. We have to continue this conversation because there's a lot that we can build upon here as far as what we want people to walk away from understanding with regard to how we organize moving forward, how we have these conversations moving forward, how the political education works within those systems in Bolivia, I think is something that we really need to examine, right? Because this is a fight that I have all the time with people who, when they talk about political education and they worry about how many people are going to be in the room. And I'm like, don't worry about that, Like if you get 5 people in the room and your information is good, those 5 people can leave the room and tell 5 more people. Right? Like don't focus on making sure that we're really telling the stories and giving the information that needs to be provided so that we can grow in understanding of that primary contradiction that Zoe put so well. So I listen, y'all don't get me started because we be in here all day talking about stuff. Is there, so we repeated, oh Grease, you missed a lot. You was late to class, man. What are we doing? I'm just joking. We started early. I tried. We did. Thank you very much, Hector, for the $9.99. We did put that back in the chat again. So hopefully everybody was able to catch that. And we only have a few minutes left, but you talked about this a lot. Is there anything that you feel like specifically folks can consider from that trip that you think can help people in the right now? And that might be a longer answer than 5 minutes. I don't know what people's time look like. I got a few extras, so I'm good. But is there anything in specific that you really want people to walk away from this conversation knowing today?
Something I think kind of building off of the conversation we were just having about history and, Zoe was spitting, so just like building off of that, is kind of, I kind of want to paint a picture of what that political education looks like, because it's little girls and little boys who are accompanying their parents and their grandparents, um, and make up a army of people who are protecting Evo Morales. There's 10,000 indigenous people who rotate through their unions in order to protect him at all times from an attack from the DEA. And so you're witnessing live, the ways in which they are taking care of each other, of their family, um, in a way that applies, their anti-imperialism, their socialism, in a way in which the children, the 7-year-olds, are literally protecting, their movement and are rapidly responding to stuff like blackouts, that are right-wing government sabotage. Um, and so I think kind of like Zoe was saying, seeing history through the lens which the indigenous are able to, is something that I think guides like me and Sophia like here, especially in DC. Like when I think about who I hang around, I'm a soccer player, so I'm always playing soccer with Salvadorians, with Central Americans, and their history is so rich, and it can't be seen as a different. There was uh, these revolutions in El Salvador and Guatemala and all these places, and now they're here. I think we have to see these people as continuations of these revolutions and talk to people in that way, because they are. And I think I see that, when I'm playing soccer with my friends, but also like when um, Sophia and I are making that goal to turn these relationships that are of building community, of building a strength within a colonial empire like the United States, into understandings of our histories of revolution in a way in which can help us move forward. And so I feel like thinking about how you can apply that to where you're at in your area is essential, for moving forward, for you know myself, having that respect to our comrades in Bolivia, applying their knowledge, their wisdom to our situations. It's something that everyone can do, and I think it's something that guides guides us definitely.
I definitely can agree with what Nico was just saying. I think living in the belly of the beast, the empirical core, imperial core, I think it is very isolationist and it can drive us away from each other. But speaking to a very wise elder who has had years of experience in the movement, she told me everyone has un pueblo inside of them, which pueblo kind of translates to a people inside of them. So you're not just one person, you're a reflection of your community, you're a reflection of your ancestors, kind of like how Zoe was saying. And also kind of how Nico was saying, out of respect to the to Bolivia and to the people that we spoke to there during such a heavy period that they're going through, they opened the door and they wanted to talk to us, with one of the goals being that we could relay this information through means just like this. So again, I just want to thank you so much for having us here so we can talk about this, so we can, pay our respects to the Bolivian people. It starts like just with connecting. I work at a restaurant with also Salvadorans who, kind of like how Nico was saying, they have such an incredibly rich history, and just kind of being able to connect the dots of stuff that they already know, but is so buried within colonial brainwashing. It just really emphasizes how everyone does have a pueblo inside of them. Everyone has a people inside of them. It just takes that, coming together, speaking on our knowledge, kind of collectivizing this knowledge as a way forward. Thank you.
I feel like I know I'm speaking quite a bit now, but I feel like the last thing that I want to add, that I think is something I think about, especially as a really important takeaway for us in the US, is I feel like people talked a lot about leaders when we were in Bolivia. A lot of the elders had a lot of valuable insights to share about what revolutionary leadership looks like and what principled leadership looks like. And something that they routinely emphasize is that in Bolivia, democratic consultation is key. People choose their leaders, and those leaders are selected from those who consistently assist and keep their ears and their commitment close to the base during critical moments. So, true leaders like of revolutionary struggle don't see their position as a prize, or don't see themselves as the megaphone for the struggle, don't see themselves as the whole representation of all the composite beliefs and individual convictions that go into the struggle, but they see themselves as someone who has the honor and the obligation to serve their community. And I think that's something that we need to ground ourselves in when we engage in struggle in the US, because I think a lot of people engage in the struggle for personal accumulation and grandstanding and political legitimization, and not necessarily because the point of being a leader is you're supposed to advance struggle and and then people like to bastardize this Tony Cade Bambara quote about, the goal of the artist is to make the revolution irresistible, right? Like they don't include the full context of that quote, right? She begins by saying, a lot of artists are immersed in a bourgeois society and culture, right? So the art that they produce is liberal and reformist. And if you identify as a revolutionary culture worker, similarly in this vein, if you identify as a revolutionary leader, your goal is to basically make sure that the revolution is never distilled in its original intent, that the revolution is close to the base, that the revolution is something that is an ongoing commitment that is constantly being practiced and constantly being sophisticated according to the changing material conditions, right? So it's not you're just propagandizing the revolution as a leader, right? You're not just doing how these how do I word these people? How these, democratic socialists say that they're trying to make socialism more appealing to the masses, but they just bastardize it. They don't use any sort of Marxist theory or anything like this, right? Like the goal of the revolution is not to dilute the message to make it accessible to the most amount of people. The goal of the revolutionary leader is to make the revolution commit to its principles and to make those committed people that are committed to those principles the strongest soldiers they can be in advancing the cause, right? So I think that goes back to what Renee's really good point was. And, you know, I'm kind of borrowing from your guys' I Love Boosters episode, because I really loved that episode in this analysis, because I feel like it's really key that you're not going to get everyone. Like there are enemies in this. There are enemies in this contradict. And like imperialism, capitalism are antagonistic contradictions. There are sides. People will have to die, as Tulac likes to say, right? There is going to be violence, right? You're not going to radicalize everybody. There are enemies. That's why the capitalists exist. That's why they're called capitalists, right? So the goal is not to convert the capitalists. The goal is not to convert everyone you see. The goal is to make sure that the dedicated people who know their history, who know their culture, right, who are not willing to compromise on a revolutionary culture, continue to advance the project of socialism. So yeah, I just want to honor that upliftment, because I feel like all the lessons they had to share about leadership were incredibly valuable to me, because I think that we really need to be focused over here, and I think we lack a focus. So yeah, and yeah.
Can we get the bars, Jab? Can we get the bars?
Yeah.
Now listen, that's called my boy. You know nothing about that.
Man, listen. Zoe about to never be rid of me. They don't even understand. Y'all don't even understand what you just opened up. Woo! Listen. I am so appreciative of the time. I thank you so much for your energy. I thank you so much for your willingness to share your experience. I thank you for taking the time to go and to do the trip, and to do it with a real revolutionary spirit, and a decision that you were going to do it and remain a part of the struggle, and not just to go so you can take pictures and show people that you went to Bolivia, right? Because Lord, the amount of times. But this was amazing. And folks, we are not through all the notes, so they will definitely all have to come back so we can finish all of the information. I want Nico to also come back again and talk more about this youth-led political education program that you and Sophia are running. So we got to figure all of this out. There's a whole lot going here that we just gotta continue. And I really appreciate Zoe. I thank you so much for reaching out to begin with, because this all started because you chose to send an email. So I appreciate that you thought of us and your willingness to come and to do this work and to share everything that you all have done. I like to let Jab end. So I always try to throw in my thank yous, and to make sure if there was anything last minute that you all wanted to throw in, that you have a second, a couple of minutes to do that. And then Jab, you can take over and let the folks go for the day.
Anyone? In any event, this has been great. And again, thank you all for reaching out and sharing this work. And I look forward to the next discussion and series of discussions with all of you. Thank you very much. This has been great. And thanks to everybody who was here and who will see this later. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, support the Patreon if you can, even for free, just to have us have a backup supplement if necessary. And as always, peace, only if you're willing to fight for it, as Fred Hampton used to say. And we will see you next week with more
Saturday with Renee.
Black Liberation Media is a collective of Black and African organizers, journalists, academics, and media personalities serving Black and African masses seeking to further grow in their understanding of themselves, their histories, and the African world through entertainment and news. Please continue to like, subscribe, and donate to the channel so we can further serve you and liberate our people. You can also go to blkliberationmedia.org, get some merchandise, and also become a Patreon member and a member from the YouTube. Please do what you can, share, and show your love as we will show ours for you. Black Liberation Media.